Most Swiss watches are actually made in China, and the reason that replicas often look just as good as the original is that they are made in the same factory.
95% of the world's watches are made here, including the one you're wearing right now. Many big brand watches are produced or sourced for parts from here.
So when you think Swiss made, you're imagining this bespoke factory in Switzerland with mountains in the background, with artisans working really hard to make exquisite timepieces.
What if I told you that the $20,000 Rolex on someone's wrist, the one gleaming under a cuff or casually flashed on Instagram, might have been born in a Chinese factory, not a snowy Swiss village? Sounds crazy, right? But that's the hidden truth shaking the luxury watch world right now. We've been sold a fantasy for decades.
So how do they get away with calling it Swiss made if most of it is manufactured in China? Well, it's a little loophole that they have in Swiss manufacturing laws, where as long as 60% of the total cost of construction happens in Switzerland, they can call it Swiss made. But
the image of Swiss watchmakers in pristine workshops, painstakingly assembling each timepiece with generations of inherited craftsmanship. We imagine old men under magnifying glasses, tuning delicate movements by hand, surrounded by mountains and precision tools. But here's the uncomfortable reality: that fantasy often stops at the marketing brochure. Behind the velvet curtains of the luxury watch industry, things are far more global, industrial, and, frankly, messy than they want you to know. And now, insiders, whistleblowers, and viral videos are pulling back the curtain.
Think about how it works in China. It doesn't cost a lot to manufacture. Almost all of the movement's the thing that makes this thing tick, is done in China. And then they'll take one component that might be a little bit more expensive. Usually it's something like the rotor, the thing that makes it automatically wind. And they'll just slap that on, and they'll make sure that that is 60% of the cost.
What's being exposed? That many of these so-called Swiss masterpieces owe their existence not just to Geneva but to massive Chinese factories producing the very parts that make these watches tick. So here's the big question: are luxury watches still worth the price, or are we all paying for an illusion? Buckle up, because we're diving deep into the world of luxury timepieces, where the line between authenticity and marketing magic is thinner than you think. For as long as we can remember, Switzerland has stood as the gold standard for watchmaking. When people hear Swiss made, they picture old-world craftsmanship, snowy mountain towns, family-owned workshops, meticulous watchmakers hunched over tiny gears, crafting perfection under magnifying glasses. It's the romantic, cinematic image luxury brands have spent millions to cement in our minds. And for decades, it worked. Switzerland became not just a place, but a promise of prestige, precision, and heritage.
95% of the world's watches are made here, including the one you're wearing right now. Many big brand watches are produced or sourced for parts from here. This place is Shenzhen City, the world watch capital city.
But here's where things start to crack. That little label on the dial, Swiss made, doesn't mean what most people think it means. Legally, under Swiss law, only 60% of the value of a watch must come from Switzerland for it to earn that prized stamp. Notice, value, not parts. That means the watch can have cases, dials, hands, bracelets, and even sapphire glass manufactured in China or elsewhere. But as long as the assembly, some movement work, or even just the marketing and R&D are done in Switzerland, it's legally Swiss. So while you're imagining your Rolex or Omega being meticulously handcrafted in a Swiss chalet, the reality might be closer to a global puzzle, with pieces sourced from around the world, snapped together in a Swiss workshop, and wrapped in the aura of luxury. And for luxury brands, that aura is everything. Welcome to Shenzhen, China. The city you probably never thought of when imagining luxury watches, yet it's the heartbeat of the global watch industry. Over 95% of the world's watches are made here. From cheap fashion pieces to premium components for luxury brands. We're not just talking about the knockoff watches you'd find on a sketchy market stall. Shenzhen is home to state-of-the-art factories producing high-end dials, bezels, sapphire glass, ceramic cases, and bracelets that rival or even match the quality of their Swiss counterparts. In fact, some of these factories are contracted to make parts for major names like Omega, Tag Heuer, and possibly even Rolex. Here's where it gets wild. Many of these manufacturers are no longer operating quietly in the background. They're stepping into the light, showing off their work on social media, and even offering custom homage builds directly to buyers. bypassing the official boutique and letting everyday people order watches with the same specs and look as a $20,000 Swiss timepiece for a fraction of the price. This isn't some back alley bootlegging scene. It's a polished, organized, and booming industry, and it's shaking the very foundations of luxury watchmaking. Shenzhen's rise isn't just a footnote. It's a revolution that's turning the Swiss monopoly on its head. So how exactly does that tiny Swiss-made label end up on a watch that's been touched by so many hands outside of Switzerland? It all comes down to one clever legal loophole. Under Swiss law, only 60% of the watch's value must be generated in Switzerland to earn that label. And crucially, that value doesn't have to come from physical parts. Instead, it can include things like marketing, research, design, and final assembly. In other words, a watch case, dial, bezel, and even bracelet can all be made in a Shenzhen factory, shipped to Switzerland. And with just the movement installed, or some minor adjustments made, it magically transforms into a Swiss-made luxury piece. This loophole has allowed the Swiss industry to maintain its aura of exclusivity and craftsmanship while quietly leaning on the scale, speed, and cost-effectiveness of Chinese manufacturing. And the kicker? Many consumers have no clue. To them, Swiss-made still conjures up visions of local artisans crafting each watch by hand in the Alps. But the reality is, in many cases, you're paying a premium not just for the craftsmanship, but for the story, the illusion of a pure, old-world product. And once you understand that, you start to see why insiders are beginning to blow the whistle. Here's where things go from whispers to full-blown chaos. The insiders are speaking out. For years, the luxury watch industry has thrived behind a wall of secrecy. But now factory workers, ex-brand employees, and even watch enthusiasts are lifting the curtain. TikTok unboxings are going viral, factory tours are popping up on YouTube, and anonymous insiders are leaking receipts. Photos and videos showing luxury watch components rolling off assembly lines in China. One former Swiss watch employee even claimed he was fired for asking too many questions about where the parts were really coming from, especially while working on supposedly vintage models from the 1970s. And it's not just tiny online corners stirring the pot. Entire factories in Shenzhen are now openly advertising custom watch builds and OEM, original equipment manufacturer, pieces, meaning they're basically making the same products minus the official branding. They're not calling them fakes. They use terms like factory homage or parallel build. To the untrained eye, they're nearly identical to the real thing. This wave of exposure has shaken the industry. And as these testimonies and leaks spread like wildfire, luxury brands are scrambling to keep their carefully curated image from unraveling. But as you'll see next, staying quiet isn't so easy anymore. You might wonder, if all this is true, why haven't we seen a massive media expose blowing the lid off the luxury watch world? Simple. Money talks. The luxury watch industry has deep pockets and powerful influence, and much of the media that covers it is directly tied to the brands. Fashion magazines rake in millions in ad dollars from Rolex, Omega, Cartier, and other giants. You really think they're gonna bite the hand that funds their glossy pages? Watch bloggers and influencers? Many of them are regularly flown out to exclusive events, given VIP treatment at trade shows like Baselworld, gifted luxury timepieces, and pampered at brand dinners. These influencers aren't about to burn those bridges to break the story. It's a well-oiled PR machine, and anyone who plays along gets rewarded. But now, the internet has thrown a wrench into the gears. Independent creators, TikTokers, and YouTubers are bypassing the traditional media gatekeepers and shining a light on the cracks in the system. And here's the most telling sign that the pressure is working. Rolex has quietly started adjusting prices. No flashy announcements, no bold campaigns, just subtle markdowns on some models, especially those most exposed in the replica scene, or an industry built on exclusivity and illusion. That's a sign of serious panic behind the scenes. So let's break down the numbers. Because once you know the math, the luxury glow starts to look a little dimmer. Industry insiders estimate that a watch retailing for $6,000 may actually cost only $1,200 to $1,500 to produce. That's less than 25% of the retail price. And when you look at profit margins, luxury watches often sit at around 10% to 20%, surprisingly lower than tech giants like Apple at 32%. or pharmaceutical companies like Novo Nordisk pushing 39%. But here's where it gets spicy. The final price you pay is inflated not just by production, but by a cocktail of marketing, prestige, and what insiders call exclusivity tax. Brands like Christopher Ward publicly admit they price watches at about 3 times their production cost. Omega clocks in around 4 times. Rolex? Most experts say they go 5 times or higher. And it works. People aren't just paying for the timepiece, they're paying for the story, the flex, the name, add in retailer cuts, authorized dealer markups, and the artificial scarcity created by luxury houses. And you've got a system designed to make you believe you're buying into something rare and priceless. But as you'll see next, the real value is often less about metal and gears and more about human psychology. Here's the hard truth. When you buy a luxury watch, you're not just paying for craftsmanship. You're buying access, identity, and status. Sure, a Rolex is a beautifully made machine, but what really gives it power is what it says about you when you walk into a room. It's the ultimate symbol of success, exclusivity, and wealth. That's why, even as the public learns how many parts come from overseas or how much markup goes into the price, people still line up for these watches. They're not just buying steel and sapphire, they're buying a feeling. That rush of confidence when someone glances at your wrist, that nod of respect from a fellow collector, that sense of belonging to an elite club. And this is exactly why fakes, no matter how good they look, rarely carry the same weight. Seasoned collectors can usually spot them. The weight feels off, the movement lacks the buttery smoothness, and under close inspection, the finishing tells the truth. But the biggest giveaway? Confidence. People wearing replicas often carry an invisible anxiety, worried someone will call them out. Meanwhile, genuine owners walk with a quiet, effortless swagger. In the end, it's not just about the watch. It's about how the watch makes you feel. So here's the $1 million, or maybe $20,000 question. Are luxury watches still worth it? The answer isn't as black and white as you might think. If you're walking into a Rolex boutique expecting pure, unmatched craftsmanship and a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, you might be in for a shock. Many luxury watches today are built with pre-made components, assembled with a touch of Swiss finesse, and boosted by decades of brilliant marketing. But if you know what you're really paying for, status, heritage, the emotional high of owning a symbol of success, then the equation changes. For some, that feeling of wearing a Rolex or an Audemars Piguet on their wrist is priceless, no matter what percentage of the watch came from Shenzhen or Geneva. For others, especially as factory direct and homage models flood the market, the illusion is starting to crack. The rise of custom builds, Telegram watch groups, and WeChat factory deals is reshaping what luxury even means. It's no longer just about who has the most expensive piece. It's about who knows the game behind the curtain. Whether that excites you or makes you rethink your next splurge, one thing's clear. The luxury watch world is entering a new era, and the rules are being rewritten. So now we're left with one burning question. Is the luxury watch world crumbling under its own secrets? Or is it simply evolving into something new? Rolex's quiet price drops, factory whistleblowers, and the rise of custom builds are shaking an industry once thought untouchable. But here's the thing. None of this will matter if people are still willing to pay for the dream. Luxury has always been about perception, not just product. You're not only buying a watch, you're buying an invitation to an elite club, an illusion of scarcity, and the thrill of knowing others will notice what's on your wrist. And that's why, even with the truth out in the open, people still crave that little Swiss stamp on the dial. But what about you? Would you still spend $10,000 on a Rolex now that you know how much of it might be made in China? Do you think the luxury giants are finally being forced to get real, or will they just double down on selling the fantasy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear it all. And hey, if you love peeling back the layers of luxury and exposing the drama brands don't want you to see, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Trust me, the next round of luxury tea is coming, and you won't want to miss it.